Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another one of the series of webinar brought to you by our Facebook group in collaboration with SILA. Again, today we have Encubate for a second session. They were kind enough to offer a second session because in the first session we couldn't answer all the questions. So this session here, we're going to try as much as possible. They're going to try as much as possible to answer these questions. لكل اللي عم بيشوفونا هلا انكوبيت رح يجربوا قد ما فيهم يجاوبوا الاسئله اللي انسالت المره الماضيه واللي نزلت هلا كمان ليستة الاسئله. They will go by theme, by group, so يمكن انه كذا سؤال يجاوبوا فرد مره, so they will manage this. Just two clarifications. أول وحدة إنه we don't have any business affiliation here. None of us is making money from this. Encubate are coming here free of charge. SILA is volunteer based, and our Faithers group also is free. Second thing, we'll try as much as possible to answer all the questions. Of course, if your question is not answered, please don't be upset. Sorry about this. There's always lack of time to answer all these kind of things. So I'm gonna give the floor now to Joel from SILA. And for me, I might leave the webinar early, so if you don't see me at the end, I apologize ahead. Thank you. Go ahead, Joel.
Thank you, Mario. Hi, everyone. I'm Joelle. I'm based in Montreal. I've been in Canada for 15 years. I'm here with my colleague Rima from SILA Canada. Firstly, I would like to thank again Mario and Encubate for making this session possible. And thank you for being here with us. We hope this session will be useful to you. I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about the process and the logistics of the webinar. First and foremost, the session will be recorded and we will share the link with you on our social medias. For the session, we're going to ask pre-submitted questions for the moment, and Encubate will answer them for around 45 minutes. And then you can type in during the session your questions in the Q&A. We will filter them and take 15 minutes at the end to answer the questions that you're sending. Lastly, we will share at the end a feedback form. If you have time to fill it up, we would be grateful. And stay tuned for more in the future, more workshops in the future. I will pass the mic to Rima to talk about SILA for a bit. Thank you.
Hello everyone, كيفكم؟ نحن هون كتير برد. شي -15 اليوم وبس بقلبنا في كتير حرارة وكتير مبسوطين إنه أنتم معنا اليوم. بس بدي أطلب من فرانسين تغير السلايد تأحكيكم شوي عن سيلا. أوكي. أنا اسمي ريما وصار لي بكندا 10 سنين ونحن basically SILA stands for Support and Integration for Lebanese Abroad. Soutien et intégration pour les Libanais à l'étranger. وأسسنا هالجمعية نحن جروب أصحاب وبعدين أكيد إجا أكثر عالم سجلناها بمونريال وأسسناها ب 20th of November 2020 بس we launched on the 4th of August 2021. Basically شو بنعمل نحن we offer support in immigration and integration and intercultural exchange and growth. So ما بنعمل immigration services بس نحن بنجرب قد ما فينا إنه نكون صلة الوصل كرمال تعرفوا أنتوا تلاقوا the right source لهالأمور يعني إن كان بالimmigration أو بالintegration أو بحيلا شيء خاصه بالحياة بكندا. عملنا شيء شوي سبيشال بسيلا هو انه خلقنا شيء سميناه the body system اللي هن اشخاص عايشين بكندا بيصيروا باديز لعالم بلبنان وبيكونوا صلة الوصل كرمال يساعدون اذا عندهم حل لسؤال عن كندا عن كيف لازم يجوا عن شو فيهم يعملوا. هو الاشخاص فيهم يكونوا students في يكونوا عائله في يكون professional حل لحدا بنحطه مع هيدا الشخص كرمال يكون عنده حدا موجود يساعده على الارض eventually اذا قدر وصل على كندا وهيك. عندنا الفيسبوك بيج تبعنا بعدنا مبلشين سو معنا كثير فولورز بنشجعكم بليز تعملوا لنا فولو. وعندنا الويب سايت تبعنا على الويب سايت رح تلاقوا فورم contact us سو اذا بدكم تتصلوا فينا وكمان في 3 forms how we can help. في فورم للممبرشيب إذا you want to become a member وفي فورم للvolunteers if you want to become a volunteer. So كلهم هيدول موجودين على الويب سايت تبعنا بالآخر إذا you want to check them out. بدي أقول كمان هاي للvolunteers تبعنا بلبنان. So في عنا دانيا وميسا يلي هن صاروا معنا من أول الطريق. وفي كمان new volunteers من لبنان جورجيو وكلوي وبترا يلي هن تعرفوا علينا بالسيشن اللي قبل. سو نحن كتير مبسوطين انه هن قرروا to join us ونحن موجودين لحل حدا بحاجة لمساعدة. So جوال حطت اللينكس تبعنا if you wanna like or follow us. and أنا اليوم بدي أقول ميرسي كتير لإنكوبيت ولماريو ولكل التيم لأنه عم نقدر نجيب لكم هيدا السيشن. وهلا رح اعطي الكلمه لفرانسين يلي رح تعرفكم اكثر على Encubate. So Francine, go ahead.
Thank you, Rima. So welcome everyone. رح أعرف عن حالي، رح أعرف عن panelists عن Encubate. So اسمي فرانسين و I'm an immigration solution specialist ب Encubate. صار لي مع الشركة من 2020 وحاليا ساكنة واشتغل من لبنان. مثل ما ديجا جوال وريما قالوا الهدف من السيشن اليوم هو انه نجاوب على الأسئلة يلي عندكم اياها عن الهجرة. السيشن رح تكون لمدة ساعة، أول 45 minutes أو أول 45 دقيقة رح يكونوا لنجاوب عن الأسئلة يلي انبعتت من قبل، وآخر 15 دقيقة رح يكونوا للأشخاص اللي حابين يسألوا أسئلتهم لايف. ماريا هي أول بانلست معنا، هي Immigration Solution Specialist ب Encubate، صار لها معنا من 2019 وحالياً هي بمكاتبنا بفانكوفر. ماريا عندها خبرة كبيرة بالبرامج أو متطلبات الهجرة على كندا، وهدفها تلاقي البرنامج أو البرامج يلي بتناسب البروفايل تبع الشخص. تاني بانلست هو باسل هو يلي أسس شركة Encubate بال2013 وهو المستشار الرئيسي المرخص ب Encubate أو Licensed Principal Consultant. So Encubate مثل ما بتعرفوا هي شركة استشارات للهجرة، وهي شركة مرخصة من حكومة كندا الفيدرالية ومن حكومة كيباك، وعندها 3 مكاتب بكندا يلي هن تورونتو، مونريال وفانكوفر. من سنة 2013 لهلا اشتغلنا على آلاف الابليكيشنز إن كانوا للهجرة الدائمة أو للهجرة المؤقتة، مثل إذن مزاولة مهنة أو إذن للدراسة. التيم تبعنا جاي من عدة بلدان وبيحكي عدة لغات، والحلو فينا إنه كلنا قدمنا على الهجرة على كندا، سو بنفهم البروسس اللي أنتوا أو الوضع اللي هلا أنتوا عم تمروا فيه. هلا راح نبلش الجزء الأهم واللي هو ال Q&A session. جوال، باسل and Maria, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Francine. So كيف رح نعمل هو إنه we received a lot of questions. جربنا to group them. يعني مثلا إذا في أسئلة بيشبهوا بعض رح نجاوب عليهم بجواب واحد. رح نبلش أول شيء بالsection like general questions concerning immigration. So our first question can, what is the fastest and most assured way to reach Canada?
Perfect. I believe I'm in charge of this one. And it's actually a great question to start this discussion today. You're going to hear this a lot throughout the discussion and some of the questions that we'll be tackling today. But to keep it short, there's no such a thing as a fastest and assured way. It is really case-based. It depends a lot on your circumstances, factors that we'll be discussing, such as age, work experience, level of education, languages, and a few more. But what I'm trying to say here is that for someone with specific circumstances, coming through a student route may work much faster than for someone who has years of experience and could, for instance, immigrate through a provincial program. So to answer this question, really, we would have to look case by case. But if I can give you a bit more of an in-depth answer here, and if we want to talk about processing times, for instance, express entry used to be or could be considered as a fast processing system. But nowadays, again, everything is delayed because of COVID. And to keep it short, again, it will really depend on case by case. And just to make sure here that we understand there's no such a thing as assured. No one can never guarantee that you will get your permanent residence. This is up to the discretion of the officer reviewing your application. So be very, very careful of those who promise you or guarantee you permanent residence.
Thank you, Mario. I have a couple more questions to you. What are the first steps to start, or what are the process steps in general for immigration?
Good question too. So I would say that the first step is to check your eligibility. A lot of people think that just going to take your English test or go and equalize your degree will guarantee that you can open an express entry profile, but actually you have to first go through an eligibility test to make sure that you can indeed open an express entry profile. So there's a calculation that needs to be run before, and we strongly recommend to get advice on what's the best program or what are the first steps that you should take for your case, whether that's preparing to get an advanced level of the language or whether that's completing another program before doing that ECA. But if we're talking about from the point where you've known what program you could qualify for and what you're eligible for, very first step would be to equalize your foreign degree if your education is solely foreign, and do your language test, whether that's one language, English or French, or both, to see where you sit at and go ahead and open the profile. Should you be eligible to open the profile and receive an invitation to apply, then you can go ahead and prepare the rest of documentation, such as police clearance certificates, employment verification letters, medical exam, and submit that to the government. That's express entry. So one would say that it's the most straightforward way. But of course, if we were to have a provincial program, we would first have to apply through the province. But in summary, I would first advise to stick to eligibility, understand what are your options, what are your realistic options, and from there, make a plan, an action plan with the next steps.
Okay, perfect. The next set of questions is related to if we can do everything alone or if we need somebody to help us, and if there's a preference to do it alone or through a firm, and if we can get an idea of the approximate fees if you want to pay consultants such as Encubate, for instance. I will let Bassel answer the question.
Sure. So before I answer the question, the person who's going to be applying to Canada needs to answer a question for themselves first: is why do I need somebody's help? Not everybody needs somebody to represent them. We call them authorized representatives, whether it is that it's a lawyer in Canada or a Canadian immigration consultant. Some people need just guidance in the beginning to be consulted, to know what options that they have. Like Maria was saying, run calculations, better understand the provincial programs, answer questions about certain circumstances they don't fully comprehend, and then they do the application on their own. Others, they require actually full support throughout the entire process because they're investing in the experience of the person, the reputation of the person, working with previous applications and such. But it's also very important to know that working with a representative does not really guarantee you an application. It does not guarantee you an approval, does not guarantee that you are going to actually get your permanent residency. You are going to enhance your chances of submitting a full and comprehensive application, and later on having somebody to follow up on things for you to make you feel more comfortable and guided through a process that they have done 1,000 times. So it's a question that you need to answer yourself. But my advice is always talk to a professional since the get-go, so you know how difficult or easy the process is going to be for you. If you think that you can manage it on your own, great. If you cannot, then just hand over the keys to somebody to do it on your behalf and let them try. In terms of fees, to answer that question, there is no standard price when it comes to consultancy, because a lawyer charges different than a consultant, and there's also the scope that you're going to be going for. So if you already have your Express Entry profile, received an invitation to apply, you just need somebody to do your PR application, well, that's a fee. If you want somebody to do the entire process for you, that's a fee. If you want to have somebody just to consult you, that's a fee. But I will give you general numbers. For a consultation, you can pay anywhere from $300 to $500 for just a consult. Representation-wise, depends on your family size. I'd say between 3,500 to 5,500 Canadian dollars, and this is all Canadian dollars. The more family members you have in the application, it could go up to $7,000 or $8,000. But what's super important for you to know is there's something called milestones. Milestones mean every step of the way there's a payment associated with it. You don't pay all your money up front. Yeah, so always remember that. Government fees wise, I'll just give you a couple of examples. $1,410 is the application fee for permanent residency for an adult. For a child, it's cheaper, it's $225. And then provincial nominee programs, they can go anywhere, again, government fees anywhere from $300 to up to $1,500 when it comes to the application fee for the government. Again, general numbers, my advice is to always get a customized quote based on the scope of work that you need and based on the services that you require. You do not need somebody to be with you the entire way, maybe in the beginning or maybe throughout the entire process. It is all up to you, and then based on the requirements that you have.
Thank you so much, Bassel. The next set of questions is related to low CRS scores and to like being more than 40 years old. We got so many questions related to that. Let's say, what program can I apply to if I'm more than 40? What if I don't have enough points for Express Entry and I've already done everything to increase my score? How can I immigrate? And how can people with low CRS open an Express Entry file? And if a low score has a chance to immigrate to Canada?
We get this question a lot. Thank you, Joel. And of course, we grouped it because they were, we thought we could give a general answer to this. So just to give some background into why this specific age question is being asked, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the factors to be considered, especially under Express Entry, is your age. And we all know that age is not something that we can change. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So what we try to focus on is, well, how can I compensate for the points that I've lost for age? To give you an example, once we reach the age of 30, we start losing 5 points for every year that we turn, 5 to 6, depending if we are married or unmarried. And once we reach 40, we start losing 10 points. So by the age of 45, we have lost all points for age. But this does not mean that our immigration options are over when to come to Canada. In Express Entry, it is true that it's challenging, and I don't want to tell you like, oh yeah, you can still get a very high score if you are over 40, but we need to plan ahead and compensate with other factors like an upper intermediate language of French, if that's, for instance, your second language, or a valid job offer, or for instance, work experience in Canada. So when we get to a certain age, we see some cases where, for instance, coming first temporarily as a worker could be a solution here, because your experience in Canada in combination with your foreign experience can actually bring your points up quite a lot. Now, another route are provincial programs. So just like Express Entry is managed at a federal level, so all provinces except for Quebec. We'll talk about Quebec in a second. There's also provincial programs where provinces create or tailor specific programs to their economic needs. So they would have an international student program or a human capital priorities or employer job offers. So there's many provincial programs. In fact, we're looking at over 60 active provincial programs as of today. And what I want to say with this is that most provinces, I'm not saying all, but most provinces do not consider age as a main factor. In some, it may be there that with some score range. But in provinces like British Columbia or some programs in Ontario, we do not get penalized for being over a certain age. Yes, we may need to compensate with, for instance, a job offer or having previous studies. But what I'm trying to say is that there are options out there for almost everyone. And going back to what I mentioned previously, very important to plan ahead and look into these options before. I'm just going to go through the rest just to make sure I cover them. So in line with what I just said, what if I don't have enough points for express entry? As some of you may know, there's a cutoff score, and based on this cutoff score, we can predict or we can advise you on, well, what's the likelihood of your profile getting selected in the next draw? If we see that it's too far away from that score, we would advise to look for other programs or take actions such as I just said, coming as a temporary foreign worker or coming through the student route. So the good thing about express entry is that you can compensate points with all these different factors. And as long as we work for it, we can find a solution. And then another thing I do want to mention related to one of the questions raised here, which is how can people with low CRS open an express entry profile? Again, very, very important to look into the eligibility. Not everyone, just because you have foreign experience, language, and certain level of education can open a profile. We have to go through an eligibility assessment where you score 67 points out of 100 to make sure that you're eligible to open an express entry profile. Now, once you're in the system, it does not mean that you will get selected. That's another challenge that we have. And depending on that score that I was just talking about, we'll see, well, what's the likelihood of getting selected? And just the final answer here is that some provinces do not work with express entry. So some provincial programs do not require you to have an express entry profile in order to get selected. You can open an expression of interest within that province, assuming that you would meet the requirements for that program. So in a nutshell, there are options, as I said before, very case by case, but we have definitely seen successful cases of people being over 40 and being able to meet their permanent residency goals.
Just to follow up on this, we just received a question. Someone is saying that he will have a score of 490. Is this a guaranteed way to be chosen for PNP by Ontario or not? Or it depends on his NOC?
490, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just before Bassel jumps in, just to touch, there's no guaranteed way again. So I believe the reason why they're asking is because there's been no draws under the Federal Skilled Worker Program for quite a while, almost a year in 2 weeks. So 490, it's definitely a very strong score if we look at the previous rounds of invitations for the past 1 to 2 years. But unfortunately, as of today, there's no draws happening for this program. Now, for Ontario, if you're referring to the human capital priorities or the French-speaking skilled worker, we actually have some recommendations to potentially fall under that score range. Bassel, if you want to add some more here.
We do have a similar question to this that we're going to go through. Again, this is a very typical question since December of 2020 till today. The reason why this question is being asked is not because this person is not qualified. Actually, this person is extremely qualified. And the problem is they're not being invited to apply because the biweekly draws for the federal skilled worker have been paused since last year. So most people are trying to find different avenues to be invited to apply in order to start their process, considering the government is not proceeding with it. And the only thing that's been running right now, well, for a while, the Canadian Experience class was running, and then the provincial nominee program draws were running, and then even CEC was stopped. And then now only the provincial nominee program draws that are happening. So everybody's switching focus to provincial nominee program, and they're asking for that, not because they want it, it's because they have no other avenues to take, considering the main entry draw, which is federal skilled worker, is paused. So I will answer that question in a few minutes once we get to it, because we do have a group of similar questions and we'll go into the details.
So we hear PNP, express entry, a lot of options. How can someone know which program is the correct one for them? And can someone apply for like different programs at the same time and then choose the one where they get an invitation? And we have also a question of how to proceed with the provincial nominee program.
So here I just want to make people understand the big picture of how the immigration law is split in Canada in terms of responsibility. So there is the federal government of Canada, and they created one system that applies all over Canada minus Quebec, which is the express entry system. And then the government of Quebec created a similar system called ARIMA for immigration only to Quebec. And then all the provinces, so there are 10 provinces and 3 territories, all 13 created their own, they call them PNP or the provincial nominee programs. They select their own candidates. Now, when you apply through PNP, you're not getting permanent residency, you're getting a nomination from a province. This nomination could potentially make you get either invited through the express entry system, or if this is a non-express entry system, then you'll get a certificate of nomination and you're going to submit a PR application on its own outside of express entry. So people usually don't start with PNP. They start with the easiest system, the most comprehensive system, which is either, hey, I'm going to Ontario, I'm going to British Columbia, I'm going to go through express entry, or hey, I'm going to go to Quebec, I'm going to go through the ARIMA system. Most people start there. And if they're unable to go to the second step, this is where they start considering the provincial nominee programs. But please do not mistake a provincial nominee program with a shortcut for immigration. It's not, because you can't apply through, let's say, the Saskatchewan provincial nominee program and then you have zero intentions to live there and you want to move to Ontario, or you can't apply to the Atlantic provinces and then you're going to go and move to Montreal. That's not how these programs have been set up. These programs are set up to assist provinces increase the number of population who's going to go study and work there in order for them to enhance the quality of life in that province. So whenever you say I'm going to apply to a province, you actually have to have intentions to live in that province. And this is a question we get all the time. Oh, hey, can I get a nomination from this province and then I move somewhere else? I will answer that question later, because again, there's a lot of people who want to go to live in Montreal and they want to apply through express entry and vice versa. So PNP, in short, you either have to have a job offer in that province, you have studied in the province, you have family in that province, or you have an in-demand occupation, something there's labor shortage in that province, and they would like to support people who have that kind of experience. That's what PNP is. Sometimes there are very specific programs related to French language proficiency under the provincial nominee program. For example, one of the famous programs is the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program for French-speaking skilled workers, right? You speak French, golden ticket to immigrate outside of Quebec. Yeah, so there are options under PNP, but we need to study your case. You can't just say, my cousin applied to Saskatchewan, I want to do the same, right? That's not how it works. You actually have to go through a specific assessment process and points calculation and all of that.
Speaking of the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, someone asked about the Master's Graduate Stream. Can you tell us more about this program?
Yes, I believe the question is with me. Thank you, Joel. Okay, so just going back to what I was mentioning about provincial nominee programs, just to recap that provinces do create these programs to meet their economic needs or labor shortages. And in most provinces, we see there's a dedicated program or stream for international students that come and study in that province. In Ontario, there's actually at least 2 programs dedicated to students, depending on your level of education and the type of program that you graduate from in the province. So specifically talking about the master's graduate stream, it is actually a great program. requirements could be seen as less as other provincial programs, but it still requires you to complete a master's degree from one of the approved universities. So Ontario, in their website, they have a list of all approved universities or participating universities. And if you have graduated from a master's program from one of these institutions, you may be eligible to apply for this program. Very, very important that there's an application period. There's a time limit here of 2 years since the date you graduate. It is done, this one specifically, it is done through the expression of interest system that they have. The score is not too high as they allocate quite some slots to this program. And we've seen that it's become more and more popular. But the most important thing I would say to first check that your university is on the list, and from there create an expression of interest system with the rest of requirements.
I want to add something here real quick before we jump off. Is just a quick reminder to everybody that Ontario as a province, they created their own EOI system, their expression of interest system. So the master's program is now through this EOI system. So you actually have to create a profile with the provincial government of Ontario in order for you to go through the master's program. Now, I personally like this program for a very important fact, which is, especially during COVID, is this is based on higher education in Canada, and it does not require Canadian work experience. It's very important for you to understand that most of other programs, they just the diploma programs, whatever it is, they actually require you to have work experience back home. They're required to even sometimes get a job offer and have experience inside Canada. The master's program, not just in Ontario, even in BC, you don't have to have work experience. So if you came to, you finish your bachelor's, let's say in Lebanon, you came here to do your master's, you finished, you can actually go through this program before you even work, where you don't have any work experience. After you get nominated, you'll be able to proceed with the system. And remember, for express entry, you need to have 1 year of experience. Master's program is outside of express entry, so no work experience is required. So that's why I personally like it, because for somebody who's younger, who doesn't have work experience, or sometimes we have clients who can't provide documents to support their work experience back home, or they can't get a job in Canada because of whatever COVID happened, this is a very good opportunity for them. In any other provinces, I want to say almost all have a similar program for higher education, master's and PhD, and then also for the diploma programs as well.
If I may just ask a question before the next one that Francine posted. So how is this program different from someone getting a study permit and coming to study in Canada?
So a study permit is not permanent residency. Okay, so applying for, most people call it student visas. The actual technical term is study permit. So a study permit is just a temporary resident status visa that allows you to come to Canada to study full-time and work part-time. You can get a study permit for you to come study high school, bachelor, diploma, master's, PhD, whatever. And if you have a spouse, your spouse will be able to get a work permit. This is just your entry step. Now, if you get a study visa to come to Canada to study a master's, right? This is all temporary resident status. There's no permanent residency part of it. But once you graduate, you need to apply for permanent residency. Through that, you can either go through express entry, you can through ARIMA, you can go through PMP. And if you go to PMP, you can then apply for immigration through this Ontario Master's Immigration Program.
Thank you so much, Bassel. So the next set of questions is related to something that we were discussing before, that if, let's say, I'm in the pool with 476 points, since no draws are being held in the Federal Skilled Worker Program, what other chances do I have? And what are the estimate dates of skilled workers draws?
Right. So this is the question I was referring to earlier. Now, the definition of a very good candidate back in the day, which is December 2020, used to be anywhere between 460 points to 470, 475 points. This is the past 5 to 7 years of express entry as it's been running, and this is the average that we have seen in the system. We are expecting things to go back just because of the nature of that score, the way that it's calculated. We expect things to eventually, once things reopen, to go back into the same range. It might be a bit higher in the beginning because it's been a while, but it is going to slow down a bit. maybe the government will surprise us and they will drop it. They've done that before to the lower 400s. But let's just take 460 to 470 as being our benchmark for somebody who can get an invitation to apply. Two problems here. Number one, even if you have that score or higher, you're currently not being invited because the draws are not happening. So people are trying to find an option. And then the other part is you might be even, and it's so funny that I'm going to say this, you might be even overqualified for immigration right now. Meaning we have clients right now who have 550 points, way above what's required for an invitation to apply. They just want to be invited to apply, but they can't even get that in order for them to start the process. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to find a way through the provincial nominee programs to be able to get a nomination for them from the province so they can get an invitation to apply and express entry through the provincial nominee draws. Here, I want you to think about it this way. If you have an ECA for your bachelor's and you have an ECA for your master's, and if you have 3 years of experience and your spouse has language proficiency, and you put all these things together and you just make a total of, let's say, 500 points. Well, guess what? The provincial government of Ontario is not going to give you a nomination or even an invitation under the French-speaking skilled worker, because they only take the range of 455 to 465. So then candidates, what they're trying to do is they're trying to, let's say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to remove my master's. I'm just going to keep my bachelor. So whoop, my score dropped 25 points. You know what, I don't even want points for my spouse's language proficiency. Oh, I just lost another 30 points. And then they fall under the specific range and they proceed. Be super careful though, because you cannot misrepresent. You can't say, I don't have a master's, right? That happened, that's a fact, that's called material fact. You cannot withhold material facts, right? You can say, I have a master's, but I don't want any points for it. I have, my spouse has language proficiency, but I don't want points for it. So be careful with the way that you're going to do it. Highly recommend to hire a professional for this, because it's a bit of a legal aspect of things that you need to manage. But anyway, long story short is you can potentially reposition your profile to fit a specific province and go through that system. Some provinces I would recommend because their processing time is around 3 months, like Ontario. But Saskatchewan, they take 9 to 12 months. Well, by then the express entry system is going to get reopened. So why did you spend all the time and money and effort in Saskatchewan for a year? And then in June, you'll get an invitation to apply because you're overqualified, right? So from my perspective, PMP is not a solution for the current situation that's taking place. If you speak French, if you can go through Ontario, do it. Other provinces, check the processing times of the province, because we're expecting the federal skilled worker program to reopen very soon. Of course, we don't know because the government hasn't announced, but the government keeps increasing the numbers of immigrants who need to come. And so far, they're not meeting the quotas. So the system has to open. This system brings more than 60% of all immigrants to Canada.
I just want to say that it's 12:41 and we still haven't tackled the other topics. So maybe we can go through the next questions quickly, so we leave some time for the live questions.
Maria, let's just do a speed dating.
Yes,
Perfect.
Do it. All of us unmute ourselves. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So the next question is related to immigrating with no valid job offer. Like, what happens if we choose this way? Can we do it?
Yes, so quickly overview. It is not required for applicants to have a job offer in order to immigrate. You can be chosen by your other skills and factors. Some provinces may require you to have a valid job offer, and in some cases it needs to be in a certain position. But generally speaking, you do not need to have a valid job offer to immigrate if you can compensate for the points that you get for other factors. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about LMIA later, but
in the next question. So Maria,
okay.
I'll give the half answer later.
Okay, so thank you, Mario. The next set of questions is related to immigrating to Quebec. Like, is it better to do it via express entry or ARIMA? And what are the processing times for the Quebec skilled worker program?
Okay, Just to clarify here, as I mentioned at the beginning, Express Entry manages those candidates who intend to reside outside of Quebec, all other provinces except for Quebec. And Quebec has its own system for those who want and intend to reside in Quebec. This is very important because we do not recommend someone to have two applications at the same time at a federal and Quebec level. That goes kind of against each other. They tell you, if you want to focus on Quebec, go through the Quebec system, or if you intend to reside outside of Quebec, focus on Express Entry or other provincial programs. So Quebec has its own platform, as it's mentioned, it's called ARIMA, and they have different programs, pilot programs, PEQ, which is having experience and studies in Quebec, and they also have the regular skilled worker program with your factors and experience and level of French mainly.
But don't cut you off, May, just because we won't have time. Just the short answer is this: you want to immigrate to Quebec, use ARIMA. You want to immigrate outside Quebec, use Express Entry. You cannot use Express Entry to immigrate to Montreal. You cannot use ARIMA to immigrate outside. Details we can explain to you later because it's based on intention. Just in short.
Yes.
We actually have a question related to that. Let's say we have someone who is living and working in Montreal and she's planning to move to Toronto. She already applied to the Quebec program. So should she withdraw her application and apply through Express Entry?
100%, because she cannot get her permanent residency in Quebec and then immediately move to Ontario because she had no real intentions to continue living in Quebec. The thing is, it's all about the intention, meaning she can actually use Express Entry, even though she's in Quebec. We have clients we applied for and got approval for them through Express Entry, lived for 4 years, studied, worked in Montreal, and then we applied through Express Entry because they got a job offer and they have a family member that's supporting them, and they were actually really moving. So it all depends on final intention of where you're going to permanently reside. This is what determines if you're going to be using Express Entry or ARIMA, not where you're physically located when you apply. It's what happens after you get your permanent residency.
Okay, our next question is related to studying for 1 year in a graduate program. Can we get a PR if we do that?
Short answer is it's not guaranteed, but it's definitely an avenue that can help you either go through a provincial program through the international student stream, or that can give you the opportunity to apply for a post-graduation work permit if you go to a public institution that will qualify you potentially for the Canadian experience class. So just to be clear, by coming to study 1 year program, you don't automatically apply for PR. You first have to qualify for either a provincial program or get 1 year work experience and go through Canadian experience class.
Short answer is, does this really help? 100%. Is this guaranteed to get PR? I have absolutely no idea. We have to check your points, your expected potential points after you graduate and work.
Okay, great. We're going to jump to a different section, actually question. It's information about the Outland spousal sponsorship. So, yeah.
Got it. So good news for everybody. Now, spousal sponsorships, it's based on an online process. It is no longer paper-based. So that means processing time is faster, mistakes are less, and then you'll be able to check your application status as well. So there's a specific portal that has nothing to do with Express Entry. There's something called the new PR portal that you'll be able to submit this application through. Something real quick I need to mention is eligibility of the sponsor to submit a spousal sponsorship application. It depends on the status of the sponsor, meaning if this person is a permanent resident versus a Canadian citizen. Only a Canadian citizen can submit a spousal sponsorship application and be located outside. Okay, permanent residents, the sponsor needs to be in Canada. The sponsored person doesn't matter where they are. So be careful, because if you're a permanent resident and you're residing outside, you can't do it. You actually have to move, and there's going to be a period of disconnection of potentially 1 year between the sponsor and the spouse, the person being sponsored. So be careful when you start the application. You might first want to apply for a visitor visa, and I know there's a question about that, in order for the person being sponsored to come to Canada first, in order for the application to be done from inside Canada, which also grants you access to something called an OWP, an open work permit for the spouse. So in terms of documents and all that, just remember there is something called legal marriage. There's something called common law partners. Common law partners are people who are not married but physically live together for 12 months. This is also accepted in Canada, and there's a process for that under the spousal sponsorship application. So the details of the application process, I'm not going to go through it. The first thing is you need to know is the sponsor inside or outside Canada, that person being sponsored inside or outside, and as there's a visa available for this person to come to Canada first, or this entire process is going to be done outside in order to avoid that disconnection for 1 year physically between the sponsor and the person being sponsored. In a nutshell.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pretty complex category too, that requires a session by itself. So we still have a couple of questions related to work permits and study permits. Do we have time to go through them, or should we move?
No, let's just go super quick. They're honestly very good questions, and then Ray and I will just kind of do it super quick. We'll take like 2 minutes.
All right, great. So first, work permits. We have a question like, if I find a job in Canada, can I go there in a work permit visa and take my husband and children with me? Second question, how can I get a work contract in Canada? And third question, how to get a job offer even though I'm Lebanese and in administration, for instance?
So here, again, all these questions that are arising nowadays is because immigration is taking over 1 to 2 years because of the backlogs, because of COVID. People are, they want to have faster access to Canada. They don't want to stay in Lebanon for 2 to 3 years until the process is done. So now job offers are being discussed and contracts being discussed and all that. Remember one thing, there's something called LMIA, Labor Market Impact Assessment, employer sponsorship. A company in Canada has to sponsor you in order for you to get a work permit. There are certain exemption codes for you not to be sponsored by a company. So if you get a job offer, you'll be able to get an LMIA exempt work permit. Example, intercompany transfer. So if you're being transferred to a location or a branch office of your company in Canada, or for example, if you speak French under exemption code C16, you'll be able to skip the requirements of getting an LMIA if you're going to live outside of Quebec. So sponsored by a company, or you're going to be exempted from sponsorship. Processing time of the LMIA is usually around 3 to 4 months. Processing time of the work permit, regardless if there's going to be an LMIA or not, is going to be based on your location, but let's say 3 to 4 months. So it's around the 6 months to 9 months process versus 2 years for immigration. So it's a very good option. The second part is, how do I get a job offer? Well, just like how you would get a job offer anywhere else, you'll have to contact recruitment companies, headhunters, make sure you go through official sources, do not fall for the scams. I have seen this a million times. Oh, guaranteed work permit, we're going to give you this, we're going to do that. I can't even guarantee my own job. So no, don't fall for these. Go through actual not-for-profit organizations, through recruitment companies who are licensed. Skip the middle person, the person who's promoting something, the person who's asking you for $5,000 to $10,000 for a job offer is somebody who's really going to hurt you through the process, because not only did you lose your money, but you're going to submit an application based on fraud and misrepresentation. And guess what? At the end of the day, the government says the onus is on the applicant. It's your problem. You're the one who's going to get banned from the country for up to 5 years, not the person who facilitated this fake job offer for you. So careful with that. Contact us, contact SILA, contact people you can trust. And if any of us can help you, we're more than welcome to do that for you. But honestly, we can't even give you a job offer or facilitate that. So you're going to have to go through somebody that is trusted.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Bassel. Last set of questions from the pre-submitted ones. It's related to the study permit. So general information about the study permit, timeline, fees, general requirements. And we have an example of someone who submitted a study permit via the GCK, and they are asking if they should reapply via the new IRCC portal. What is the difference and what is the faster one?
Perfect. Okay. Real quick, applying for a study permit also has to do with your intention. So what you intend to study in Canada, you need to demonstrate that you're a bona fide student, that you have a clear purpose of why you are pursuing those studies in Canada. So we have to make sure we submit a strong study plan, but also very important, meet the financial requirements. So we have to make sure that we demonstrate enough funds to cover our studies in Canada for at least the first year. Now, in terms of fees, government fees are $150 plus biometrics, 85 if you haven't taken that before. And timeline, we're seeing anything between 3 to 6 months. Some countries are taking even longer, but as you may know, COVID is just switching things around. So worst case scenario, I think in the worst of cases, I would say 6 months or so. Now, related to the specific case, there are two ways where you can apply for a study permit, on paper and online. Online, if you're doing it through my CIC, it would be through the GCK that's mentioned here. Now, the new portal that you're mentioning, I believe, has to do with permanent residency application that the government just launched. So nothing to do with study permits or these temporary residency applications. So you have submitted your application online through GCK. Just wait for their response there. And faster one. Sorry.
I can answer the difference between the two portals. So yes, so what Maria said is 100% right. So the new IRCC portal is only for permanent residency applications, either through PMP, spousal, and other streams, and that's about it. There's no IRCC portal for study permits. Your GCK, that's called My CIC. That's the account you submit all your study permit, work permit application through it. This is where you go through express entry as well. And then for all non-express entry PR applications, you go through that portal. Okay, and don't apply on paper. I do not recommend it whatsoever. You will not be able to follow up on your application. You're not going to be able to get an application number. It's a hectic process. Use online. You'll be able to follow up on the applications. Government is prioritizing study permit applications now. They want more international students to come. So you're looking at around 3 months, give and take, from the day that you'll be able to complete your biometrics based on where you're located. Last thing I mentioned is study permits. Careful when it comes to the financials, right? Nobody cares if you have $3 million in cash in a bank account or under a mattress. That's not what the officers are looking for. The officers are looking for something called financial establishment. Financial establishment is not how much savings you've got, is how much money you make per month to recover the cost of your studies in Canada, meaning you have to submit your employment letters, your sponsors' employment letters, so there's money coming in on a monthly basis, in addition to the funding required based on the formula that the government gave you. There's a formula online, very simple. First year tuition plus $10,000 for the principal applicant, $4,000 for the spouse, $3,000 for every accompanying family member. Add that all together, $30,000, $40,000 Canadian. That's why I need to show in savings, plus your financial establishment and the study plan and the continuation of studies that Maria mentioned. I just summarized international students in 30 seconds.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you for the marathon.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, guys.
So much information. I mean, we haven't even finished the question.
So shall we go to the live questions?
Yeah,
okay, sounds good. So we're going to try and cover as much as possible. Okay. There's Rosie. She's asking, can I apply to study permit for an Inside Canada with a program of 1,400 hours?
Right. I love this question. Can I answer it, Maria?
Yes, please.
Cool. So initial study permit from Inside Canada is based on certain conditions. Number one, if you're a minor who's inside Canada going to school, going to high school, let's say, you'll be able to convert your status from a visitor to a student. If you're an adult and you're going to go to a post-secondary program, you have to be careful because you cannot apply for initial study permit from inside Canada. The application is going to be processed outside, even if you're physically inside, unless there's one condition to be met, which is you're going to come to Canada for the purpose of studying a prerequisite program. So for an example, if you don't meet the conditions of a school, so you're going to go to college, university, and your letter of acceptance is conditional upon completing something specific, which is a requirement. Most of the time, it's an English ESL or French second language program that you have to take. So you study English ESL for 3 to 4 months, you complete that, and then you'll be able to meet the conditions of your school. And then that gives you the access to apply for a study permit from inside Canada. I'm not going to say it's a difficult process. Hire a professional. Do not do it yourself, because this application could potentially make you lose your status. You enter a restoration status. You will not be able to fix your status after that. You have to leave and come back, and you might have a problem at the airport, and it's going to be a whole nightmare. Do not apply until you talk to a professional to make sure that your conditional letter of acceptance is okay, your prerequisite program is okay, that makes you able to apply for initial study permits from inside. And there are many different ways to do this. We can do it through the States. You can do a port of entry, flagpole, turn and come back again, a million different ways. I'm going to call time out because I think Mario has his hand up. So let's just hear from him first. Forgot the other questions.
Thank you very much, Bassel. Because I have to leave in 3 minutes, I want to ask a question that a lot of people ask in the group. So I would like also your input about it.
Really?
We hear a lot of people in Lebanon. They know someone knows someone in the embassy or in the United Nations. They can get them. Well, they call it إعادة توطين or whatever it's called. It costs you like $500. You'll get the citizenship from Canada right away and things like that. Please, I beg you your input about this because a lot of people are being scammed. And thank you very much.
Right. So the Immigration Act and then there's the Citizenship Act, two completely separate laws, right? So the Citizenship Act, there's no such thing as direct citizenship unless you're biologically related to somebody who used to be a Canadian citizen, right? And there are different generations. So it means both your parents biologically are Canadians. One of them is born here, or your grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. So these are, or you served in the, let's say Canadian Air Forces or whatever it is. There's certain requirements, but mainly it's you're either born in Canada to become a citizen or your parents or grandparents are Canadian citizens. Other than that, you cannot become a citizen. You must first become a permanent resident. Then you get your citizenship through certain requirements. And for you to become a permanent resident, you have to go through one of the normal programs that we all know. Skilled immigration, family sponsorship, refugee status, et cetera, et cetera. Refugee status is either the government is going to resettle you in Canada or you're going to come to Canada with some sort of a visa and apply for asylum here. In both cases, you first have to become a permanent resident, and then after that, you become a citizen. So the short answer to the question you're asking, Mario, is there's absolutely no such thing. And if it is based on fraud and misrepresentation, and certain people are doing certain things. Do not fall for this. The government is making it so easy for everybody to go to their website and check things on their own. Use legal sources. Don't listen to me on my website. Go to the government website. If I'm going to give you something, Mario is going to give you something, we'll always refer you back to IRCC. Not because we're lazy and we don't want to explain things to you, it's because we need to show you the legal source, the law behind things, in order for you to make the judgment by yourself. Your cousins, I respect them, but their cousins are digging a big hole for you that later on is going to cause you a lot of problems. Don't fall for it.
Sounds good. So a question from Dania. If I applied for a work permit in Quebec, since there's no FSW draws, what if the draws resume and I get an ITA? Should I reject it or cancel the work permit, or is it okay to have both?
Not related. But the work permit is temporary resident status. They express into whatever it is you're going to apply under later. There's this permanent residency. So as long as she's going to be able to relocate to Canada, to Ontario, and show her ties to the province and her intention to move there because of a job, because of a house, a rental agreement, a friend, a family member, whatever it is totally fine. She does not have to cancel the work permit. She can even continue working with a work permit in Quebec. And then once she's ready, she can relocate to Canada. We have many cases who got approved where they're still in Montreal and in Quebec. And then after they get their confirmation of permanent residence, they relocated to the province because they just need to show their intention. They don't have to be physically outside of Quebec.
Okay, but how long is it taking? Because like people apply for a work permit and then they wait and they wait. And even though the employer is there.
Well, depends, Rimari. So to inside Canada applications, outside Canada applications, there has been an exemption because of COVID that allows people to apply for a work permit from inside Canada. So they're changing the status from visitor to a worker. So that's an exemption. And if the application is being processed inside Canada, it's around 3 months, right?
Okay.
It's those
outside.
Applications outside depends on where the location of the application is, right? So if they're applying through Dubai, they're applying through Lebanon, they're applying through the US or whatever it is, the processing time is based on the embassy that's processing it. And that is potentially going to be closer to 6 months.
Okay. A question from Petra. I might be getting a job offer from a Quebec company. Is it considered Canadian experience, or I have to actually work in Canada? Should I receive a job offer to move to Canada? Will I have to fill a file for Quebec or federal?
Maria, do you want to do this? Or do you want to do it? So two.
Sure, yes. So short answer, yes, it's considered Canadian experience as long as you obtain it with a valid work permit. And just to define here, what's the definition of qualified Canadian work experience? 1 year. The difference between outside and inside Canada work experience is that for Canadian experience class, it can be accumulated, but it needs to total up to the 12 months. So full-time, at least 30 hours per week, and needs to be in a qualified position, not 0, A or B. But your experience in Quebec may count towards Canadian experience if you want to apply for a federal program. Again, your intentions, if you apply for a federal program, need to be to reside outside of Quebec in the future.
The only thing I want to just add here, just because I've heard a few misconceptions about this, is just getting a job offer does not equal Canadian experience. Yeah, the job offer on its own, if it's supported by an LMIA or if it's a closed work permit that is employer specific, it potentially can give you 50 or 200 points. But that's just because it's related to LMIA. But if there is no LMIA, the job offer itself is worthless. Right? Doesn't give you any points, doesn't give you Canadian experience. You can potentially use it for PMP and go through an application process. But you need to take this job offer, convert it into a work permit, take that work permit, work in Canada for 1 year. And then after you get 1 year in Canada using the details that Maria gave, that's only when you can get actually Canadian experience and go through CEC. Job offer by itself is not Canadian experience.
Okay. So another question, someone is writing, I have answered in EE profile on a question that I have applied to Immigration and Citizenship Canada before, and I answered no because I thought this is related to immigration only. Though I have a valid visitor visa and I informed them also by this mistake by web form, and I passed eligibility also before sending the web form. Will this cause an issue or it's not, since I'm not hiding a refused visa and my visa is accepted?
I'd have to double check the answer that they answered no to, because there's around 15 different security questions. One of them says, have you ever applied for a visa to Canada or any other country? Have you ever received any rejections or refusals from the visas? And there's a question about immigration. That question about immigration, if they answered no, that's technically correct, right? Do not confuse visas with immigration. Permanent residency is immigration. Visit visa, study permit, work permit, that's temporary residency. So technically, if that's the question that they're concerned about, that's the right answer that they picked. But if have you ever applied for a visa to Canada, they should have answered yes. Now, let's assume that is the case and they did submit a web form. As long as you disclose this information, as long as this information has been added to your profile, you have informed the officer. You did not misrepresent, you did not withhold any material fact. How do you know if the web form was processed? You usually get an answer and if you don't get an answer, submit an ATIP request, get the GCMS notes from the officer to see that this actually got added to your application. Worst case scenario, get your ATIP, see what visa office is processing your application, go find the email address of that embassy and send them an email and say, hey, listen, I submitted a web form, did not get a reply. I'm hereby letting you know about this. As long as you put the effort, show the intention that you're disclosing this information, that is not misrep, you should not worry about it whatsoever. Passing eligibility or not, that's different, right? That means absolutely nothing because security clearance is the last step. It's not in the beginning.
Okay, another question from Wolves Clan Adventures. Hello, this is my case. I got the PNP from Ontario April 2021 and submitted my PR May 2021. I received the message medical exam passed on November 2021, waiting for background checks, approval, and final decision. Because of the backlog and COVID, my PR might be late. So if I bring a job offer in Ottawa, for instance, will this speed the approval by choosing my profile from any other, or I might be late again as IRCC will be checking again on the job and papers, or is it better to just wait? Sorry.
Use the job offer to get a work permit, and the work permit processing time is much shorter than the PR application. That will give you faster entry to Canada. But in terms of the job offer speeding up the PR application, absolutely not. There's nothing I can do or anybody else to process this. There is hundreds of thousands of applications backlog, and you've noticed that the system has been shut down for over a year in order for the government to just remove this backlog. I'm begging everybody, please don't act like COVID never happened. COVID happened. There are backlogs. There are delays. You need to be patient. Number one, we tell people when they submit an application is submit this application and forget it happened. Don't freeze your life. Don't sit there and just refresh your browser looking for updates. This is when you frustrate yourself and you start making mistakes. We've seen many mistakes that could have been avoided by just being patient. Leave Lebanon, go to Dubai temporarily for a year, wait for your PR, and then come back. I know the situation is not that great, but don't make a mistake that you're going to regret later, okay? But the short answer is no, that will not speed up the process. You want to know what's happening inside your application, submit an ATIP, get a GCMS notes. If you can't read it, understand it, let us know. We'll explain it to you. We'll tell you what's happening inside of it. But processing time are delayed. Expect at least 1 to 2 years for your PR application to be completed.
Okay, another question. As a math teacher with 15 years of experience holding BS degree, what is the best program to apply knowing that my age is 38?
Maria?
Yes. So with that education, quickly review my head and years of experience were maxed out because we have at least 3. We would have to put more pressure on the languages. So potentially achieving a high level on one of the languages and an upper intermediate in the second language could give you enough score to compensate for the points you've lost for some age and not having that master's degree. And this is just roughly thinking about it. Now, if considering a PMP, please check always the list of ineligible occupations, because we know for a fact that, for example, teachers are in an eligible list in provinces like Saskatchewan, but they may be on demand in provinces like New Brunswick or other provincial programs. But as a short answer and recommendation, focus on languages.
So Rimet, the short answer is either speak French and English, well, advanced English, upper intermediate French, or vice versa, right? And then you're good to go. Or go through the in-demand occupations of the provinces. There are some provinces who support teachers. Not all the provinces are the same. So you need to go and check the NOC, the National Occupation Classification, for teachers who are being listed in the provinces and how frequent these NOCs are being selected, because every draw, sometimes they change it. And then Quebec is starting to do NOC-specific draws, targeting certain NOCs, and then teachers, for example, in Saskatchewan and other places are being selected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're just, because time is flying, we're going to take 5 more questions and then wrap up. Also, Joelle will be posting the feedback form if you want to give us your feedback in the meantime. So now we have a question from Sarhat Kuzian. Hi, I am planning to submit spousal sponsorship in March. My question is that can I apply for tourist visa now from Germany so that I have the option for inland, or would that be misrepresentation? What are the risks for rejection?
Okay, amazing question. Unfortunately, Canada does not have the fiancé visa similar to the US. So the USA that states you can come apply for this visa in order for you to arrive with your spouse, and then you can start the procedure inside the US. Canada does not have this. So it means whenever you want to apply for the spousal sponsorship application, like I was mentioning earlier, the best way is for you to have a visitor visa to come to Canada and then submit the spousal sponsorship application from inside. This first visa has nothing to do with the spousal sponsorship. Be super beyond careful. The TRV, they call it, the temporary resident visa application, is based on temporary resident status. It means you have absolutely no intentions to stay in Canada beyond 6 months, which is your allowed stay with a TRV. You cannot say, hey, I want to use this so that I can go to Canada and get married, or I'm already married and I'm going to start my spousal sponsorship application. I'm not going to leave Canada, and that's why I want a visitor visa and I'll give it to you. Refused. You have to have a serious intention to why you're going to come to Canada. Me and my wife, me and my husband, me and my spouse, we're going to go visit Canada. We have family there. We're just going to look around. We're going to stay there for 3 months for summer, and then potentially we might stay longer. We might go back, right? That application is going to be judged based on its own merits, meaning you need to show and demonstrate your intention to leave Canada before 6 months. So how are you going to show that, and at the same time you're going to stay longer? It is a very big problem in Canada. We spoke to the government many times. We're saying these people would like to stay, but you're telling us we have to tell you that they're not going to stay. How come there is no TRV procedures for spouses? Yeah. So until now, there is no procedure for it. So you have to get a visitor visa. Doesn't matter where you're going to be applying from Germany, from Lebanon, doesn't matter. But you have to show your intentions that you're going to be leaving the country. And then after you get the visa, if you change your intention to potentially stay, then you may get that visa and then do the spousal sponsorship from inside. Otherwise, you have to do the spousal from outside, and it will take 1 year.
Thank you, Bassel. There's a question from KLD. He asked it really at the very beginning. He is telling me, please answer my question. So I'm going to get married next year. What is the best way to bring my wife to Canada? I live in Quebec and I still do not have my permanent residency.
So if I don't know what his status is, visitor, student, or worker, in all cases, potentially he will be able to give some sort of a permit for his spouse. So my advice is you can try the visitor visa route, refer to my previous question, as long as the spouse is going to go back. If the spouse is not going to go back, then that means if he has a study permit, he can apply for an open work permit for her. If he has a work permit in a valid occupation, then potentially he can apply for an open work for her. And then after she arrives in Canada with that visitor visa or an open work permit, then the spousal sponsorship application can be done inland. She can apply for another work permit for spouses, and then the processing time for the spousal sponsorship is 1 year. The problem is if he applies for a visitor visa, or if he applies for an open work permit to match his status, and that gets refused, there will be a period of disconnection for 1 year between them. That means the spouse is going to stay outside, he's here, he's going to file the application outland. Once that's done, after 1 year, she'll be able to come as a permanent resident. Details and all that fun stuff, we can give it later, but potentially either get her an open work permit if you have a study permit or a work permit, or apply for a visitor visa based on the answer I gave to the other person.
We have a question from Greg. My wife received her PRTD under the category of RC1, humanitarian. My son is a Canadian citizen. After her appeal, they told her to let your husband and 4-year-old daughter to apply for TRV. It's been 45 days we applied, yet nothing. And my wife PRTD expires in March 2022. And it is so hard on her to leave a 4-year-old daughter in Lebanon and sponsor her from there. Please, can you advise, how can I follow on this issue? I send mails to all departments and yet no reply.
Nobody's going to answer. So there's a process for family reunification. So if there's a family member who's a permanent resident, a Canadian citizen, or has the valid status in Canada, there's a specific email address the government has. And now they created a web form process specifically for this. So you can go and submit a web form, but don't submit a general web form. There is a process for it in the drop-down menu that says family reunification. And then through that, you're going to say, I am going to reunite myself with my family, and mention their status and mention why the government needs to allow your TRV or your temporary resident visa, your visit visa to be processed. The reason why this person is saying this is because now TRVs are not being prioritized. It's taking 9 months for a TRV. We have tried many times to speed up this process. There's nothing that we can do because the government is taking the backlog and going through them. When they at the bottom of the barrel, that's where TRVs are. What they're saying is if you file a TRV and you have a family member in Canada who's a citizen or has a permanent residency or got legal status, and you want to reunify yourself with them, let us know. We might take your application out of the pile and then we'll prioritize it for you based on the normal processing times. So web form, specific category, right? Of course, an email to the embassy, nobody's going to reply. They're super, super, super busy. Or potentially you can consider withdrawing your application and resubmitting it again directly under the family reunification procedure. Got questions? Talk to us. We'll see how we can.
So last question, and for all the people who wrote questions and we couldn't answer, you can email us. We will post the answers, no problem. So the last question is from Anonymous. Hello, I received a CSQ and applied to PR. My oldest son is diagnosed with high functioning autism. Any idea about the medical process timelines or if we might be rejected because of it? Mild case, no medication integrated in Lebanon in mainstream school setting.
First of all, I apologize for this situation. I know it's a tough place to be, and I'm trying to settle yourself in Canada as a family and immigration and medical inadmissibility and all that. So just understand that medical inadmissibility is under two factors or two steps. There is serious diseases and illnesses, and there's something called excessive demand on social services, autism and such things, special needs. That's under excessive demand on social services. In the past, this used to be a no-go, as in if your son or your daughter is inadmissible to Canada because of excessive demand on social services, the entire family becomes inadmissible. Luckily, Canadian laws are based on case law. There is a case that went to federal court and it got approved. And because of that, medical inadmissibility under social services got changed in such a way where the limit of spending per year is now 10 times more than an average Canadian. This is what's allowed under the immigration system. So whenever the child with special needs is going to go through a medical exam, the panel physician is going to take all the details, medications, et cetera, to see how much is the cost that is going to be incurred on an annual basis by the condition of this person that the healthcare system in Canada are going to pay for. And if it's 10 times what an average Canadian requires or less, the family is not going to be inadmissible. And then everything is going to be okay. If it's more than 10-fold, the applicant, the principal applicant, needs to show their ability to support their child with their expenses, to say, I'm not going to require anything from the government. Look, I've got my savings, I've got my work, I've got this, I've got that. I will be able to take care of my son or my daughter's expenses. And then they can demonstrate that. And then they'll be able to bypass this medical inadmissibility. Very, very obviously detailed topic we can take offline, not a showstopper. Like I said, this is changed since 2018. When the limit increased, there are articles and details available online for you can read it. And of course, if you are inadmissible to Canada, you can hire a specific lawyer who specializes in medical inadmissibility to pretty much take this to appeal a decision and go to federal court or even Supreme Court as well. And then potentially they can consider your case. But off the boat, potentially it might not be a problem.
Thank you so much. So this is the end of our session for today. So I just want to tell you thanks for tuning in, and thank you for all the interesting questions. For SILA, our upcoming events, we're going to make a few events. Some of them are for the people in Canada. Some of them are for Lebanon. So we'll have about integration. We're going to do also an employment, matching employers with job seekers. We're going to work on that. We're having also, in terms of exchange, a gathering for the parents living here in Canada. So please follow us on Facebook. You also, Joelle is posting our contact information. You can reach out to us with any questions. And please fill out the feedback form if you can. We appreciate your feedback, your comments. And now to Encubate, if you would like to say a few words before we say bye-bye.
Maya, you want to say something real quick?
Just thank you, SILA, thank you everyone for being here. There were a lot of questions. Thank you all for asking. I'll leave our email in a second. Otherwise, you can follow our website, encubate.ca. We have our email there and ways to contact us. And if you require further assistance, we'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Last thing I actually wanted to say is special thanks to Riva and Joel and Maria. You guys are doing an amazing job, honestly. I mean, in our profession, we've been doing this for over 8 years, and we know how tough it is. And if you've seen the second you talk about visas and immigration, there are, so many questions and people need help. And this is our job, honestly, since the beginning, is to give this guidance and, let people know the truth. If it's hard, it's hard. If it's easy, it's easy. And I wish more people like you, like SILA, like Mario, and the amazing job he's doing as well, is just to give this opportunity to people to get their voices heard and get unsolicited advice about what they need to do. So thank you so much for this. I really hope that your company continues to grow. You guys are doing great, and we're here to help anytime you guys need. So thank you.
I just want to say a quick word also. Thank you for giving us your time to answer all these questions. ولكل العالم اللي معنا بعرف انه في كتير أسئلة بعد ما تجاوب عليهم. Stay tuned رح نعمل بعد other sessions in the future Q&A مثل هيدا و other sessions related ل specific programs. وفيكم كمان ترجعوا to revisit the recorded sessions. This one we're gonna record it and post it على social media تبعنا. و you can also revisit introduction to immigration session عملناها كمان last month مع Encubate. و stay tuned, we have a lot coming up next year. Good luck لكم كلكم.
And well, Joel, also what I'll try to do is once you post the recording next week, and hopefully I'll be able to see all the unanswered questions, and maybe I'll talk to Mario and we'll be able to post the answers, you know, through you, through your website or whatever it is, so that at least people who asked our questions and stayed with us for an hour and a half, they'll be able to get their answers. So it's not fair not to answer it. So we'll definitely make sure to answer those as well.
All right.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Francine, Rima.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.